So something that someone asked in the comments was about the mixing of the vaccines. They were just curious as to whether you had any thoughts on, yeah, the because I think, for example, in the UK now, if you go for your booster, it's almost all Moderna, regardless of, whether you'd had, say, AstraZeneca or Pfizer or whatever else they were offering up at the time as your first two shots of a vaccine, and then they've been mixing and matching. Is that a bad idea, or is it sort of just like we don't even know?
Well,
And the other thing I
this
just want to
whole
tag on here, just really briefly as well, is the spike protein, because something I heard discussed quite a lot was this idea that because the vaccine was imperfect and only targeting the spike protein, essentially, not every single way that it could end the virus can enter your cells and become, yeah, like infect you, that was also meaning that we were, yeah, contributing to this phenomenon that you've been discussing.
Hmm. Well, let me first maybe answer the second question. Um, the spike protein is responsible for the infectiousness, and the infectiousness means the entry of the virus in the susceptible cell. And I hear this oftentimes that people say, yes, the virus has several different proteins, and it has been a bad idea to direct the vaccine only to the spike protein because should we have had other components in the vaccine, of the virus in the vaccine, then we would have had a much broader immune response and it would have been more protective. Well, that is actually not true because people very often, even scientists, are confusing um, immune responses with protection. So, of course, the more components you have in your vaccine, the more or the broader your immune response will be. But I'm not interested in immune responses if they cannot, for example, neutralize the virus, or if they cannot, like T cells, for example, kill virus infected cells. If these are just immune responses that recognize certain components of the virus, but they cannot prevent the virus from infecting the cell, or once the cell is infected, they cannot kill the virus infected cell, like T cells, for example. I mean, there is no added value of these things. On the contrary, you are just going to divert the attention of the immune system to several different components so that the component that matters receives relatively less attention. So the fact that there is one thing in immunology, Josh, that doesn't work, and that is the more the better. So people always think that is a human reaction.
Mm.
This thing doesn't work. We're going to throw more stuff into it. More components. We are going to make the vaccine more complex, etc., etc. That doesn't work. So yeah, the S protein is the target for infection. And therefore, it is the right target if you use this vaccine in a prophylactic way. So that means, as I was saying, let's say you would go to a country where there is, for example, SARS-CoV-2, and there is it is endemic. It is not a pandemic. It is just in that region. You could, of course, immunize yourself with a vaccine that builds antibodies against the spike protein. By the time you travel to that country, you have a very nice titer of high levels of antibodies that are precisely directed against that very variant in that country. You're going to be perfectly protected, right? So it's not about the target. It is about doing this vaccination in the midst of a pandemic. And if you do this, you must make sure that your vaccine can basically block the transmission and block the infection. But we don't have this type of vaccines. As I was saying, when you do this prophylactic vaccination and you have the high titer of the neutralizing antibodies before you go to that country, and the variant that is circulating in that country has exactly the same spike protein than the one that is in the vaccine, then your immune response, your antibodies will be able to block the transmission of that virus. They will prevent the infection. If you use this very same vaccine in another situation, for example, in a pandemic, or you use this when you are already infected, let's say you got the infection, you're incubating the virus, and then you come with a vaccine, it's too late. It will not work. It will no longer have this infection, this blocking effect on the infection. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's a matter of, are you using these vaccines under the right conditions? It's not, is it the right vaccine? Of course, there is a lot to say about the mRNA vaccines and all these type of things. I fully agree. But in principle, with regard to the efficacy of the vaccine, the major mistake, the major failure has been to use these vaccines during a pandemic. And that not only means that the vaccine is not efficacious, it means that you leave the door open to immune escape, which we discussed, and which can have, as I was just explaining, detrimental consequences, not just for individual health, like side effects do, but also on a population level, of course, because it prevents herd immunity and it prevents, therefore, to stop and to tame the pandemic. But now, just I've forgotten about the first part of your question.
It's all right. It was mainly about it was just about whether mixing vaccinations had been
mixing
a bad
vaccines.
idea.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let me be very short on this one. There has been, it is just catastrophic the way these mass vaccination campaigns are handled. I give you one example. We are vaccinating children, youngsters, pregnant women, elderly people, etc. You have to realize that in the clinical studies that were very short and where we had not long-term follow-up, we had only limited target populations. We had like young and healthy adults between 20 or 65 years old, and maybe a few elderly, but we definitely didn't have pregnant women. We didn't have children. We didn't have people who had already had the coronavirus infection. Yeah, we did not have people with underlying diseases, etc. And now everybody gets vaccinated. This is unprecedented. This is insane. Same thing to your point. I can tell you, I worked for a long time in the vaccine industry. Normally, when you change the dose of the vaccine, you could say, that's a small thing, etc. Very often, you are bound to restart your clinical studies. You could say, for such a minor change, yes, it may, the regulatory authorities may require you, especially if you have not a correlate of protection, to redo your full clinical trials. Here, we are talking about mixing up vaccines. Starting with J&J, then coming with Pfizer, and then still doing a boost with Moderna or whatever. And it's all fine. Regulatory authorities, it's all fine as long as you get this damn jab, right? I mean, this clearly illustrates where we are going and what forces are driving this. This is unprecedented. This is irrational. This is just crazy, insane. I'm not a native English speaker. I don't find the appropriate words.
But I think you're using some pretty appropriate words.
Yeah, incredibly unacceptable. It's completely unprecedented. Yeah. So no. The answer to your audience is no. This is completely insane. This would never ever be approved, authorized by a regulatory authority if we didn't have this, this kind of very crazy push and coercion on people to get the vaccine, whatever it takes, whatever vaccine it is, and whatever target population, whether it's about children, young children, 6-month-old, 85 years old, people with underlying diseases, people with diabetes, pregnant women, you just jab them, and that's the goal. And that's the only purpose. It's a scandal. It's a disaster. It's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. This is not my area of expertise, but it always seemed a little bit reckless to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
exactly.
that's just one idiot's opinion. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment for us in the comments below. Let me know what you thought and if you'd like to see more of this from the show. Thank you, and we'll see you again next time.